All right. Good evening, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hopefully, this is your favorite time of the week, which I look forward to each and every week, hitting that 7 o'clock hour on a Wednesday and getting to jump on here and doing a Wisdom Wednesday segment. So, as always, as you jump onto the feed here today, I want you to make sure that you give me the thumbs up with some comments. Stop by and say hello. Let me know that the audio sounds good and everybody can hear me loud and clear. With our last segment, we actually started doing something a little differently, and we are actually doing a live giveaway during the feeds. So I generally don't tell you what that's going to be. I'll let you know afterwards. But how we're going to do it today is going to require a little bit of work from you. So if you see the scrolling marquee on the bottom, it says giveaway. The only way to qualify for the giveaway is to write #question followed by your question when it comes time to ask some questions on the equipment and the things that we're going to review today. So stopping by, Carrie, hope you're going to bowl well at league tonight. Jason, we got coming back. Terry's back this week. Oh, Willow is sick again. So, Willow, I'm glad you're watching. Sorry you don't feel very good, but hopefully you feel better by the weekend. How's it going, Kevin, Jordan, everybody that's stopping by and saying hello? I love it. It means everybody can hear me loud and clear. And hope everybody is ready for a segment tonight where we're gonna go over and review a multitude of items, because when we start talking about equipment specifications, things along those lines, there is so many topics that can be rolled into full segments where I could talk for an hour and go on about one thing or another. And when we ask individuals for things that they'd like to learn about, we get so many different responses, and some of them are a little generalized, and I think I can kind of take those, kind of mesh them together a little bit and give kind of a broad spectrum of topics. And when we're talking about equipment in general, it is not just exclusive to bowling balls, right? We have accessories in the game. We have shoes. We have bags and certain types of, it could be wrist guards, anything that we need or we feel we need to perform at our highest level. So I think right off the bat, we generally get so hung up on the fact that bowling is so equipment driven based on the bowling balls that sometimes we lose sight in all the factors that kind of go into it. So for a lot of the past couple of weeks, we've been talking a lot about our practice regimes, our commitment to positivity, our balance between, theory of learning and actual physical practice, some key elements that we can extract, turning our negatives into positives. And the other portion that comes out of it is to totally understand or start understanding together some of those other outliers, which is the equipment that we choose to carry to league and to tournaments and to things like that. So I think one of the big things that is asked of me probably more than anything is customers and clients will come in all the time and they'll start talking primarily about, I need this for my house shot bag and I need this for my league bag. And they start asking me about what my feelings are and what should be in a bag. And my question or my comment going back to them is generally loaded in the same direction. And that is essentially talking about every single person is so unique to what their needs are that it isn't a one specific method that we would go after for each and every person. Okay. Because there's so many different things that go into the formula about creating ball arsenals and understanding that, we need to actually look at each and every person's arsenal, bag building, ball choices, layout choices, everything that we do for that person as they are an individual. Okay. So when I go on to things like Facebook and other items like that, and I see people asking questions about how should I lay out a ball X, Y, and Z, or what will this ball do for me, or it's a picture of a ball asking what the layout is, it's very quick for me to really understand truthfully that there is a lot of learning potential out there for individuals to understand that layouts are different for each and every person based on how you deliver the bowling ball. We need to understand this, because what we fall trap into is thinking that we see somebody that doesn't remotely throw a ball the same way that we do and see them having success with something, and then immediately feeling like we have to have that specific ball, that specific layout, because you know what, it looked good for the guy or gal that shot, an honor score, or, maybe they just had a really good night and it was the hottest one on the market. But all those things in the formula go into selecting equipment. So first and foremost, I think what's really important for everyone to understand is that when you are in the market for a new bowling ball, okay, you really need to be working closely with your pro shop operator so you can truly understand exactly what you currently have in your arsenal or in your current bowling bags. And then from there, make some very detailed suggestions of what is going to benefit you the most. Okay. Just because Hammer, the company I bowl for, or our brands or something, releases a bowling ball and it's the newest, the latest and greatest version of what we have going on, doesn't mean that that particular ball is going to fit your game personally. Okay. So first, you really need to make sure that you're working with a pro shop operator. And a lot of people that stop on the program here have gone through the process with myself at Pirate Bowling to have all the very critical specifications measured when it comes to knowing your axis point and your tilt and your rotation, your abilities to manipulate your hands in different positions and things that you can do. So we understand the full versatility of the player. Okay. These are part of the equations that I specifically need to make ball recommendations for you based on what the actual makeup of that ball is when it comes to the core design, when it comes to the cover stock or the surface preparation. And then what else do you have in a bag? Because bowling balls at the end of the day, until they're drilled, they're not cheap, right? It's not really a cheap sport, if you will, if you're trying to be completely competitive or you're trying to stay with the technology updates, because everything comes circle, right? They make technology updates to the balls, to the oils, the proprietors change shots, or you're bowling on things you've never seen before. To keep up with it, and you're buying high-end balls or low-end balls, you're on average spending anywhere between $169 up to like probably $229 or $249, depending on what you're getting for one single ball. So I think for me, it's even more critical for me to work with my clients to make sure that we're getting you the best possible choice for you. Okay. Not because of what marketing material says, not because of somebody else you saw throwing it, how it performed to them, but it has to be specifically make sense for what we're trying, the desired outcome. So when this happens, we'll have individuals that'll look over, try to do their homework and stuff like that, which I encourage. You can look at the marketing materials, but there's a lot of, nomenclature and verbiage that's used in the marketing materials that can be misleading sometime to what bowling balls' intentions actually are. Okay. One of the most stock terms I probably get from individuals all the time is, I want my ball to go really long and turn and snap, skid hook, skid flip, whatever you want to call it. And at the end of the day, that is not really a desirable ball motion to have optimal scores coming out of your game, right? Skid flip is very specific to when you're playing specific type of angles. It's not actually a motion you're looking for generally for 80, 90% of the individuals that you're going to use from the get-go to actually score an average higher. You want things that you can read and they're controllable and have intention. And the problem is that people will say that's what they want this to do. And then they'll come and they will say, well, I saw hammer, for instance, let's use the Envy, right? The Envy is marketed as, big hooking ball, right? So when we see that, we automatically think that means the hook is at the back end of the pattern and it's going to hook the most down lane. And it's just not the truth. Okay. We have to go back to understanding ball motion, right? So I'm going to ask the question now. And if you want to take an opportunity to put hashtag question and throw it in here, you can use it as an answer. I don't care. Is if I asked you, what are the 3 motions that a bowling ball must do when it goes down the lane for each and every one of us? What are the 3? I'm going to have a little bit of a pause. I'm going to be looking over here to the right. Again, if you want to start getting into the giveaway scene, just type hashtag question and then just write your comment afterwards, and that's going to put you in a drawing in the background, okay? So what are those 3? And if you can, give them to me in the correct order. All right, so Mark Walters is going to put it up here. He was the first one to put it in. And Mark, I'm going to make sure that worked. It did. So hashtag questions, as soon as they go in there, it puts you in the marking. So Mark put up question, skid, hook, roll. Okay. Everybody's saying the right things, right? Skid, hook, and roll are 3 things that have to happen. So do you notice they're in order? And actually, Mark has them out of here. He has skid, roll, hook, right? If we look at what Colby's saying, this is the right order. So if a ball is marketed as the biggest hooking ball, where do we think that bowling ball and hook is coming from? Where is it? It skids, it hooks, which is the body of the lane where it's trying to read the most. And the misconception is when we're talking about equipment and ball technology and layouts and things along those lines is when a ball physically slows down and changes direction, that is when it's getting out of the hook phase. And when it changes direction and rolls forward is where it's changing direction. So when we yell hook down lane, all the way down lane, we're actually asking the ball to do something that it's already done. What we really need for it to do is get into a roll. We need it to slow down and get into roll. So when we see these high-end, super, a ton of grit to it, matte finish type bowling balls, big asymmetric cores, things along those lines, these bowling balls are not intended to be big down lane motion bowling balls. It's just not the intent. But when you ask me to try to make one of those balls skid flip, or I want it to go long and be really strong in the back end of the lane, that's just not going to happen unless we alter that particular bowling ball and altering it from what the intent of that ball was, or we change the surface preparation and really do a lot of tweaking to it. But guess what? Where am I going with this? What's Coach talking about? Well, the reason I'm saying this is that is not what the intent of that ball was actually for. What we have to do is if that's truly a motion you're looking for, we need to take a selection, a specific ball release that is actually made to match what you're looking for, right? So if I'm looking for a ball to be, say, skid flippy, right? I'm going to go to something that's probably a pearl, right? I'm going to make sure that my layout is going to keep that bowling ball in the skid phase with a higher drilling angle. I don't want the pin to PAP to be too strong because if it over flares, it's going to see it too early. And then I want a quick response to friction, which means my back angle on a dual angle is going to be pretty low. I want it to roll forward quick when it sees friction, right? That's all part of the equation. But if we select the wrong bowling ball, or a pro shop you're working with selects the wrong bowling ball, you're not doing yourself any favors to building an arsenal, and the equipment that you're buying isn't actually matching what you're looking for. So I would say at the end of the day, there's still individuals that say, well, you know what? I still really like that ball, so I want to go with it. Okay, right? So myself, other pro shop operators and stuff along those lines, we're gonna try to accommodate what you want. We're gonna give you what you're asking for, but we're gonna do our best to make sure that we educate you in understanding what you're asking for and what you're going to get are going to be 2 different things. And unfortunately, what happens is when it doesn't roll the way you expect it to roll, even after you were warned, it's usually comes back as, oh, the pro shop didn't do it right. Okay. Or we go and maybe we take it somewhere else and we have it plugged, and now we gave that core horns and stuff like that. It's never going to roll close, and it's going to still not do what you want it to do. Okay. So when we're picking out equipment, the biggest thing that I'm trying to get across to everybody is that we need to truly understand the actual intent of the bowling ball that you are purchasing. Okay. If you are unsure of the marketing material and the way that it is actually what the verbiage says of what it's supposed to do, that is the perfect opportunity to ask questions so we can help educate you on what you're actually getting. Okay. So going back and talking through all those things, and we're building multiple ball arsenals and things like that, we also want to make sure that we're not having a ton of overlap from what one ball is doing to another. So I think a pitfall we see a lot with individuals, and some people kind of go above and beyond and say, well, I want this specific layout. Like maybe they did a little research or understanding layouts a little bit. And let's say they have 5 or 6 balls. And now out of these 5 or 6 balls, they have all these various layouts on them. And they end up being too close together reaction wise because we're not allowing the physical bowling ball itself to actually do what the manufacturer intended for it to do. So when a manufacturer, let's say, again, for Hammer, okay, or I could throw other names out there, Brunswick or anything like that. When you look at their website, okay, and you're looking at their lines from top to bottom, they are actually physically making ball releases to try and have motions that go from an early big hooking motion all the way up to super clean, not a lot of motion. So you have the full gambit from top to bottom within that line. Now, where this can get convoluted, okay, and we have 7 brands. So Brunswick owns 7 brands. And where it can get super convoluted is that there's so many balls across the 7 brands that if you start picking and plucking balls from Track and Brunswick, and then maybe you sprinkle in a Storm ball or 900 Global or Swag, I don't know, Motive, and you start grabbing some from all these different lines, what do you think happens, right? What ends up happening is that the cover stock technology is so different from one another. You end up with overlap if you stay within maybe the 7 brands sometimes, and you get balls that are too close to each other, and you're not really getting the benefit out of that purchase. So I use myself for example. So I have the ability to throw any of the 7 brands that we have, but when I look at my bag and when I'm building my bag for competition, I essentially have a full line of Hammer balls in my bag. And then I may sprinkle in 1 or 2 from some of the other brands that I think are really special, or I know I really like that core in that ball and it has the cover combo that I like on it. But I try to stay within the Hammer brand to build my arsenal. I also do not really get super crazy in differences between the layouts that I choose from ball to ball to ball. Okay. I'm going to tell you that I use what I would refer to as probably 3 total layouts. And one of those is basically I have a stock layout I would use for a symmetrical core ball, and I have a stock layout I will use primarily for an asymmetrical ball. And the only really thing that I'm changing on that is how far I'm putting the pin from the axis point to dictate how much I want that bowling ball to flare or not. Okay, so I'm really trying to control the middle part of the lane, what the bowling ball is going to do. The rest of it, the angles that you hear, drilling angle and val angle, and or if you're using the VLS system from the other company, it doesn't matter which one you're using. When you have your specs and you have them done correctly, meaning you have your axis point, you have your tilt, which is a huge one for that front angle. You have your axis rotation, which is really going to be critical to what do we want the ball to do once utilizing the val angle. Once you have that, and you have what I'll refer to as kind of matched up to your style, your traditional release, things along those lines, we tend to use numbers that are pretty close because aesthetically, that is where your natural delivery should fall into. It's going to fall into more of that sweet spot. It's going to make your percentage of shots that actually carry go up. Okay. If you are an individual who is, constantly leaving corner pins, or your bowling ball is coming in too steep or behind the head pin, it could be a multitude of different things. You could have the wrong surface prep. You could not have enough motor in the bowling ball you're using. But a lot of times I'm going to tell you what I see is it usually starts with layout a little bit because it is not optimized for your delivery style. So the ball is actually fighting. The layout of the ball is actually fighting because the core is trying to do what you're telling it to do. The cover is trying to do what you're trying to tell it to do. But the layout I put in it is not getting it to get either unstable enough or it is too stable when it's going down the lane. And it causes our carry or our entry angle into the pocket to create less count on a first ball, which desire-wise, we're looking to get 9 or better, right? So again, I'm going to go back to the exact same thing and say that it's so critical to have all of these parameters measured, okay? If you don't know, and I'm going to have clients too that, they just trust me to do it, right? But if you're a serious bowler and you're kind of really getting into this and you're trying to understand all aspects and you're like a student of the game and stuff, you should really know what those parameters are for yourself, right? You should know what your axis point is. You should know what your tilt is because it can better help you understand what you could be doing in practice sessions to try and adapt or change when you need to do some different things to the ball. But it also helps you to understand not only selecting the right equipment, but your surface preps and your layouts and things along those things that are going to make your tools, which are your bowling balls, more optimum for you. Okay. So, Coach, do you have a different suggestion for house shot balls versus what people refer to as tournaments? And to an extent, I'm going to say yes, to an extent. Okay. I am probably going to choose different types of bowling balls that I take to tournament, but I'm really not tweaking my layouts that much. So it's not like I have 9 balls set off to the side that I only take to tournaments. And it's not like I only have 3 balls that only ever go to league. But it is a different type environment, right? When you get into league, usually there's a lot more friction to the right and you have hold to your left. And when you get into a little tougher conditions and you don't have the nice pattern and the blend and stuff to it, there's more of a premium on shot making. You want the bowling balls to do a little different things. So more so than anything, it will be my surface prep of those bowling balls where I will generally use more surface to get the bowling balls to slow down in the right place, to make my moves, seem like they can be slower as the lane is transitioning for me. So I do approach how I attack a house shot versus how I would attack a pattern or a sport pattern or something like that with a release parameter, but I am not just setting aside specific bowling balls to use on one over the other. I mean, that's a question that's come through a couple times. All right. I mean, how many people in here really know what their specs are? I mean, like I said, I got a lot of regular clients in here, and they've probably heard me say what they are, but they may not even understand it to the fullest extent of what we're talking about. And again, that's where you do need to trust me to be able to do the right things. But I think everybody that does come to me understands that I always challenge them when they say, I'm thinking about this ball. So my stock answer coming back to them is always going to be, okay, is this to address a hole where you feel like there's a gap in between specific bowling balls? Is this to replace maybe a cover that you feel is kind of going to the wayside or it's at the end of its life? And this is going to come out and this is going to go in there in its place. We have to make sure with purpose, just like we practice with purpose, we're going to drill with purpose. We're going to select balls with purpose, and we're going to actually use the theory side of it to plan out what we're going to do, right? And what we're going to actually add to the arsenal. So one question that came through earlier as well was, how much emphasis do you put into kind of reading lane graphs and things along those lines to decide what equipment you're taking to a particular place? And I think that question is more for individuals who have an enormous amount of equipment. And I'm probably, maybe I'm on the other side of the spectrum, and maybe this is a little bit of being around a game forever and being a little more old school, but I will look at a lane graph if I know what I'm going into, but I am not going to handcuff myself into thinking that I have to play that in a specific manner, because it's just not going to play the same from building to building, oil to oil, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to do that. Now, I will not make specific altercations to my cover stocks going into that, with the exception of if I would make some preparatory changes, I would actually be bringing my surfaces of my bowling ball up. Okay, so let's say the bowling ball is at 1,000. I would bring it up to 2,000 or 3,000 before I went, because it is a lot easier to bring the surface of a bowling ball down by hand than it is to bring one up by hand at a tournament. All right. But again, I don't get into that very too often. I just want to make sure my cover stocks are clean. I probably have them freshened up to where I generally keep them at, because guess what? When I bowl standard events or I bowl practice and stuff, and I'm keeping after my surface preps, what am I doing? I'm actually training my brain to what this equipment does for me. What do these tools do for me? So if I go and I start altering this so crazy with these things and thinking I have to have the specific cover, the specific Abralon pad that I have to use going in to bowl this event, I think at that point you're actually overthinking it too much, because what you really want to do is you want to actually go into those events. When you practice, you understand how you figure out what a lane is telling you right off the bat. And the ones I tell my clients all the time is, you're going to pick a bowling ball that you trust, which I would call your benchmark. So maybe like a matte finish symmetric ball, very round in shape, doesn't do a lot of things. I would actually take that ball and I would use that as what I use to determine what the lane's doing. So I'm going to get my feet set. I'm going to throw a ball first arrow. I'm going to move 5 left, throw one over 10 on second arrow. I'm going to move 5 left, throw one over third. And what I'm really looking for is where I feel like I have the oil to my left of the pattern, and I have, or the shim, if we want to put it that way, and where I have a little bit of bounce to my right. So it's going to determine what that's doing, and it also tells me what the lane is doing front to back. So I know if I need a motion that is going to be a little earlier than that, or if I need to be on the other side of it. Okay. So right then, when I'm physically throwing shots, warming up in the building that I'm at for that day, that is when I'm actually going to take when I'm bowling for score. And if I need to bring it closer to me at the foul line, make it get out of the skid phase a little sooner, then I'm going to alter my bowling ball and bring it down. Okay. So again, bringing it down on the fly with a pad is way easier than, let's say you have a ball at 500 and you're trying to bring that thing up to 2,000 by hand. It's just not going to happen. You might get a little bit of smoothness over the top of it, but underneath that thing's still got some serious teeth to it. There is some questions that's going up here, and if it's the first question you're asking, just make sure you've already put in hashtag question. We probably have, we need a lot more hashtag questions with a capital Q, guys. If you don't use a capital Q, it's not going to put you in. Got to have it the way I have it. So Jason is stopping by. Jason, if you don't know, he is a staffer with Deviate, and he also has Jaybird Bowling, so he does a lot of online videos. Check him out for Jaybird Bowling on his YouTube channel. So do you go with a lot of short pins? And what Jason's asking here with short pins is his pin to his axis. So a short pin to PAP is what you will hear more or not. So one of the things that I will use a short pin for, Jason, is if I'm really trying to get a core to stabilize and spin up, kind of get it out of that skid phase, spin up, stabilize, where I'm trying to keep my angles more shut down and not giving it away from my body as much. So I like short pin balls on, for instance, like over cliff house shots, things where I want to get closer to the friction to the right or play the friction more, and give me a look with a little bigger core. So when I use short pin balls, I really like to do them in asymmetrical balls. just to take advantage of the bigger core dynamics, and I really like it when I'm doing it in an asymmetrical solid. What I'm really looking for there is I just want something that's going to be stable, slow enough, where it will actually burn off energy and hold line longer, which you could argue, some would say, well, a short pin ball like that and a big asymmetric can take over for urethane. And while it can give you some urethane type reaction, if you will, it's still not going to be as early and roll forward like a urethane ball does. And again, as it's a good thing to talk about equipment is that, right now, I think people think like urethane balls are just like the devil, right? Like they just ruin everything and they're terrible and blah, blah. And, I have my opinions on them. And while I'm not a huge fan of them in league where I don't think that they're needed, I understand why people are using them, right? So they're using them because there is so much buildup friction. They just want to use the friction in the front part of the lane, get their bowling ball to roll forward and hold its line. So you're not having to play around the world or make shapes where you got to get your ball going right quick to get it around the puddle in the middle part of the lane. So I'm not against those, but short pins, I think they do have a purpose. And if you ask the lefty, I don't think he's on right now, but Matt Pine is a huge fan of short pin bowling balls. So he puts them in stuff like, he's got him in a bunch of the Katana balls. We actually did the brand new Katana Legend for him. We just did one with a 1 3/4 inch pin just the other day. Mark is saying, I absolutely love. I actually feel comfortable being able to keep the ball in front of me. And that's Mark is saying the exact same thing. So the short pin ball allows it to stay in front of him. And again, let's take this a step further. Like if you don't truly know what your axis point is, if you haven't had it measured in a long period of time on a non-flaring bowling ball, you're not getting a desired reaction. You could call it a short pin, and if you don't have your axis point correct, there's no such thing as a layout. And that's why it's hard to go on and see some of the forums and stuff where people are asking for help, but not truly understanding what they're asking for because we don't have enough information to give an educated response to what they want, right? So I'm going to flash this one up here, Joel, and I think this is a good one for the segment because I'm going to this is something we can say here. So it says, I try to keep all of my equipment box finished because I like the look each ball gave me when I first rolled them. Great. Okay. That's a good comment because you're using that based on your arsenal, right? But there's one thing here, Joel, that I actually talk to customers a lot about. So everyone needs to understand when you're going through the bowling ball manufacturing process, bowling ball manufacturing, they're making hundreds and hundreds of balls, okay? They're going down the production line, and when they go through, they have to go through a finishing process. And the finishing process is going to go through, and it goes through a series of machines that would look something like a Haas or Powerhouse or any one of the resurfacing type machines, which are equipped with Abralon pads and things along those nature. Now, if you think about this, if you have Abralon pads in your own bag, as you use them, they start to wear down and they don't actually sand in a manner or give you the desired finish on it that it did when it was brand new. Like if you take a fresh 500 pad, right, and you take it on a ball, that thing looks like chalk. You're getting some white dust on there. The thing's getting scratched up in the cover stock. So if we have a bowling ball come off of a manufacturing line that says it's 1,000 grit Abralon, okay, do you think that the first ball that hit that finishing process at 1,000 Abralon with a brand new pad looks the same as the one on ball 75 before they changed those pads out in the process? It's not. It doesn't matter what manufacturer it is. It does, unless we were using a brand new pad for every single ball that went down there. You are going to have different surface texture and an undrilled bowling ball from the manufacturer all the time. So one thing that I really like to do, and I really like to say this to my customers all the time, is let's say if I have a Dahl bowling ball, okay, out of the box, it says it's 1,000. Guess what? I hit it with my own 1,000 pad, a brand new one. because that is the only way that I'm going to know what that ball starting point is going to be the same when I go to hit it again with a fresh 1000 pad. That's the only way you're going to be able to do it. So I actually physically hit bowling balls with a pad before they even go down the lane. Okay. Is this what this is? So Terry just kind of asked the same question. So yes, Terry, I absolutely would recommend putting surface on a new bowling ball close to out of box so you can keep it consistent when you resurface it. Yes. I'm also one that's going to tell you that when I get polished bowling balls in, right? If I get something that has compound or polish on it from any manufacturer, for me, depending on the player, okay, that stuff is very important to keep that box texture, right? So whether it's a person that has their release, they struggle to get a bowling ball through the front part of the lane, meaning they have an extreme amount of tilt, which wants their ball to go right quick and kind of shape up early. We can only do so much of that with the layout on the front number of the ball. That individual might like that box surface. But to use an example for somebody like myself, I do not like compound. I do not really like polish unless it's something very extreme because, again, I'm not trying and looking for very steep angles or very whippy bowling balls, if you will, because they just don't strike. They get you in trouble. When you miss with them, they get six too often. So I am a big proponent of taking balls out of box that are compound or polished, and I will immediately knock that compound or polish off with whatever desired grit. Maybe it's 1500 or 1000. Because remember, even if it is a pearl or a hybrid bowling ball, okay, pearl or hybrid, that has nothing to do with it being shiny. A pearl bowling ball has pearl pigment in it, okay? So the pigment in it is what is pearl. You can take that compound off of that ball or the polish, and it is still a pearl bowling ball. It's still going to have those same things. Okay. I'm trying to get to a lot of these questions here, and I think it's great. So it comes in. So bear with me as I'm going to answer as many of them as I can. So Carrie asked a good one. Okay. In simple terms, can you explain what RG, diff, and asymmetry is? So the best way to determine diff, okay, diff is basically the higher number the diff is. So let's say we started at 0, and it can go to 0.059, if you will. The higher the differential number is, the easiest way to understand that is how much that bowling ball has the potential to flare. Okay. So the higher number, the bowling ball can flare more. So if a bowling ball flares more, we're basically telling it to read the hook phase of the lane more. So the body of the lane. Your RG, okay, your radius of gyration, a lower RG ball is going to tend to rev up quicker. Higher RG ball is going to tend to rev up later. It's going to get down the lane further, okay? And your asymmetry, which is only found in an asymmetric ball, which could be called your preferred spin axis or mass bias or things along those lines. When you get the higher asymmetry numbers, you are going to see that it will make a ball roll forward more. Okay, so somebody can say it's continuation. I don't really say that because when you get into some of the balls that have these astronomical asyms, and I'm not going to pick on the company that does them, they just don't roll well for a lot of people because they roll forward way too much, and you can only trick them so often for the individual. So when we're picking out balls, Carrie, for each individual player, if I was to give a determination here, so I recently went to 14 pounds to help me with some back issues in my knee and stuff along those lines, and just felt that it helped me to be able to use my legs a little more. I can manipulate my hand. But in a 14-pound bowling ball, I had to make some changes, and it's important to understand this because in 14 pounds, especially in my brands, the RGs and the balls are immediately going to be higher. Okay, so I know the bowling balls are going to get down the lane further for me with my natural release. So what I did is I adapted my front and back angle numbers a little bit, and I drilled the pin to PAP a little stronger to make sure the ball flared a little more so it didn't miss the body of the lane. Okay, so I had to adapt knowing my parameters, knowing the parameters of the ball. I adapted from there the layout. Okay, so I hope that helps because it's important. All right. Kevin, question. What exactly is the difference, if any, for balls that are considered overseas releases? So there really isn't much, Kevin. So overseas releases, I mean, they go through a ball schedule just like we do here on the state side. These bowling balls are manufactured and they are sent over. So, like for instance, if you're seeing overseas releases in the Hammer brands, they were made in Reynosa, just where our stuff is. They have their own lines over there. They go overseas. The only differences you're really going to see is maybe the core and cover stock combos that they throw together. But there is no technical advantage to any balls that are released overseas, other than the fact that you're going to pay a premium dollar for them to get them over here. But performance-wise, you're not getting anything differently. And I guess the easiest way to say that is, I don't want to kill the market or anything for that, is that there's so many balls that saturate the market here. There's no reason to get them overseas. And you're overpaying for something you don't need to. Okay? So they're not really a big difference. Oh, man. Caitlin, question. Could you please explain a hybrid cover stock? Sure. So we hear the difference between a solid cover stock, okay? And then we hear the terminology hybrid, and then we hear the terminology pearl. So here's the really cool thing I think people don't understand. And I just hit it a little bit when I said that you could sand a pearl bowling ball. So when you look at a bowling ball, okay, and you look at a multicolored or multi-tone, it could be the same color. So it could be a couple blues in a ball. When you get a hybrid bowling ball, you're actually getting a pigment color in that ball that is a pearlescent color, and you're getting one in that ball in a swirl that's actually a solid. So you have a solid color and you have a pearl pigment color that are put together in the cover stock and blended to create a hybrid bowling ball. Okay, so it is one and the same. So going way back, and Caitlin, this is way before your ball. This is when I was a kid, right? One of the first hybrid bowling balls that was ever created was the Helix Quantum, and the Helix Quantum had a strip in the original one, which was a gold strip. And you had one part that was a reactive, and then you had the black portion of it, and I could be saying it backwards, which was the kind of the urethane base side of it. And that was the first attempt at a hybrid for different kind of surfaces that were put together. And it made for a different type of ball reaction, especially if they didn't know your access point and you didn't get the first flare ring to hit the right spot on that ball. It rolled terrible. But a hybrid is one of the same. So when you think of solid, hybrid, and pearl, think of those again in your front to back, right? A solid bowling ball generally is going to be the earliest motion, right? If you go to hybrid, it's going to get down the lane a little further for you. And when you get into all pearlescent color, it's going to give you more projection or lay into skid phase longer. So front to back, you're controlling that skid phase and the hook phase and when you want the bowling ball to go forward. Okay. Another one coming through. Chris, I saw your question. I already answered it, which was touching a surface. Okay, Don, let's see what we got here. It seems that of recent, balls tend to lane shine quicker than older releases in spite of regular maintenance. Is this due to the cover stock additives and the plasticizers in the ball? And do you see this with your clients? Yeah, Don, I think the best thing to really talk about that is actually your bases of your cover stock are going to play a big part in that. But the biggest thing is the finishing preparation. So what I will tell you is a bowling ball lane shining is going to happen more if there is more steps in between the finishing process. And what do I mean? If you take a ball and the finishing steps on the box, say it's 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 Sayer, right? Or Aberlon, whatever, easier for everybody to understand. That bowling ball is going to tend to lane shine quicker than if we went and took a pad and went 500 and then immediately went with 2,000 over top of the ball. And the reason for that is because you are actually, the finishing process is smoothing the ball out more when you're doing all those steps in between. So if you give it a little bit of what I refer to as teeth underneath and projection on the top pad on top, that bowling ball will not lane shine nearly as fast. Okay. Now, the thing of it is as these oils that are used in the lanes get thicker and thicker, and there's more traffic and more of a puddle in the front part of the lane, at the end of the day, with bowling balls being designed to soak in oil and do that to a faster rate, what's actually happening is the pores of the bowling balls are actually being filled in, and the ball gets smoother, loses reaction quicker. So again, that's where it comes into, equipment. We can look at equipment being, proper cleaners, how often you should be hitting it with an Abralon pad to freshen it up, how often you should be taking your equipment into a detox. And, I've heard some silly things recently where people were told by other shops and stuff how you should never detox a ball or bake it or any. Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't try to bake a bowling ball at home by yourself because it's just going to end badly for you. But that is just so far from the truth. I mean, a proper detox system or a oven, whether you get a detox from Jayhawk or you get a oven from Jameson and Innovative and those guys over there, those things are all part of proper maintenance to get that oil out of there. Otherwise, that plasticizer that's in there, when it's not controlled with the heat and stuff, that smooths out the pores and your ball just gets shell death. Okay. You have to do it the right way. Let's see here. So Troy, how often should you change pads? I'm assuming you mean Abralon pads. Unless you have a surface scanner, it's kind of hard. So I will tell you, obviously, if you're using Abralon pads dry, and with no water at all, which is generally what we do when we're out in the field, right? Or you're in competition, but if you're at home and you can wet them and stuff, they'll definitely last longer. But the easiest way to really do that is if you're using them dry, I would say if you've used them more than 10 to 15 times, you're starting to lose what that original grit was. So you may have to lean on it a little harder if you feel like you want to get it. So at the end of the day, you're really not concerned with like saying, I got to have this at 500. You're really concerned with if you use it and you feel like it's not getting the shape earlier, which is what you're doing as you go down in numbers. That's probably telling you right off the bat, I can't get this ball earlier. So it is time to jump in there and replace the pad and make sure that you're getting the desired outcome. Okay. That was a good one. All right, Brett. I actually love all these questions. This is what makes the feeds great. They essentially ask things that are on your mind, and this is what you should be asking me over, all the time and working with your pro shop guys. So, question: how do you determine if bowling balls should be drilled pin up or pin down? What is the major difference, if any, in these layouts? So, again, going pin up or pin down, it's a loaded question because it is very much different now drilling a ball pin down than it was when we were using weight holes. Okay. So when you're literally drilling a ball pin down, what you're really doing is you're actually basically laying the core on its side. Okay. So if you think about the pin is the very top of the core. So if I put that straight up in the air, the core is straight up and down. If I start to get it underneath the fingers, I'm laying the core on its side. So if you think about when you're dropping something, right? If it comes from here to here, that's going to actually happen quicker once it rolls over its axis, okay? If I start from here, you're actually going to give it more of a rounded off shape, but the ball actually continues more. So back in the day, there was always the talk that was going around was that the pin down balls hooked earlier. Okay, well, the reason that they felt like they hooked earlier a lot is when we had to follow weight hole rules, when you went pin down, your CG and your mass was kicked out so much to the right that you generally had to put a weight hole not only on the side, but it was generally down below the midline of your grip. Okay, so when you got a weight hole down, what you were actually doing was increasing the strength of the bowling ball, but you were actually making that ball rev up earlier. So what were you doing? What were you doing? You're making the RG of the ball drop. So that ball was actually spinning up, so it actually hooked earlier. So now I say this all the time to people when somebody goes, well, I don't want a ball pinned down because it's going to hook early. Guess what? It don't hook early. A pin down ball is going to be slower response time to friction. Okay. And if you follow And I'll give a shot. I think Bowl U does a fantastic job, like talking about, friction and response times and things along that stuff, and really understanding your equipment. What you need to understand is that your response to friction with a pin down ball is slower. So that ball is going to really feel like it actually goes longer. It's going to be more rounded, but it's going to continue more it'll be slower, but it's going to continue more through the pins. When you go pin up, okay, and pin up, pin down isn't one thing, but when you go pin up, generally you're going to create a quicker motion when the bowling ball sees friction. That motion when it actually gets out of the hook phase and rolls forward is going to be quicker. Okay. So when we're doing that, to answer your question, Brett, we need to be careful what individuals we're doing it for. So am I going to take a pin down, really slow response ball for somebody that is, speed dominant and doesn't have a lot of tilt? Nah, because the bowling ball is going to probably feel like it wants the hook and the ball return coming back. We need to fit the layout to the individual. So for me, I honestly love pin down bowling balls because it makes me feel like I can use the bigger asymmetrical pieces, lay the cores over. That way I feel like I can trap them a little further to the right because they're a little slower, and I can use a lot more surface of my bowling ball to get it nice and slow and stable. Okay. So big difference between up and down. Probably goes on Jason, kind of the same. How do you utilize pin up versus pin down? Kind of the same thing there. Chris, how often do you recommend detoxing a ball to keep the life of the ball? So I think this is probably a good response to this, but I would say realistically 70-ish games, okay? And that may seem high, but 60 to 70 games can happen pretty quickly. But if you are doing normal maintenance to your stuff, and meaning you're doing generalized cleaning, you're staying after the cover stock a little bit with pads and things along those lines, you're going to prolong that a little bit. Once you start seeing that you've stayed after the surface prep and maybe the ball starts to feel like kind of listening to the ball, if you will, if the ball just seems like it's kind of losing the pop it has, no matter what you do with it, it's definitely time to bring it in and have it done. Look, I say this stuff all the time on Pure Bowling, and and this isn't a sales pitch for cost or anything, but like a detox, basically it's an expensive machine. Okay. I utilize it all the time. I've seen detox services go from all the way up to like 50, 60 bucks. I charge $10. Okay. Bring it in. Let me take care of the ball. We can liven them back up, right? You put it on there, put it on the wheels for a little while, refresh that surface, cut a little bit of it off that you can't do just with an Avalon hand by pad. And let us take care of it. That's the best thing you can do for it. So, Mike, just make sure you do this. If you haven't done it already, make a separate post that says hashtag and then real big question marks that enters you in the sweepstakes. But his question is having trouble with everything overreacting on a house shot, even with short pin drillings. What are some other options for slow speed rev dominant? Okay. So here is a tricky one, Mike, and I get what you're saying. So I'm assuming you might still be bowling left-handed. I don't think I saw anything that you went back to right-handed, or if you would, must mean your knee's feeling pretty good. But here's where it goes, because you could say, okay, well, this guy needs a super polished bowling ball, right? And, because he needs to get it down the lane, right? The same thing I hear what I would refer to as, I don't want to say a novice player, but somebody that's not as experienced, right? And they know they're going to go in and bowl in a short pattern, and all of a sudden they want every one of their bowling balls polished because they got to get it down the lane. That's not how it works, okay? So, Mike, I'm not sure what you're doing with your surface preps, but you actually want to go the opposite way and use as much surface as you possibly can, okay? You can do it with short pins. Short pins will stabilize. I would go the opposite realm and do a super long pin on it with a ton of surface. And with the intention of that is that you want to make sure that the bowling ball is basically puking, right? What you don't want to happen when you have slower ball speed is, remember, if you have a polished bowling ball or a pearlescent bowling ball, especially paired with a layout that's going to promote down lane motion, you're going to get what you ask for. If it's slow, once a pearl bowling ball or even a hybrid or something like that, or something with polish on it sees friction, that thing is going to lock up and change direction even harder, right? So the other thing you want to do with it is you want to go on the air of the side of a ton of surface, utilize and play the front part of the lane. So what you're really trying to do is try to get your bowling ball motion to burn off in the front and stabilize and roll forward, right? So you're trying to literally get your bowling ball through the 3 phases that we answered earlier together, which was you got to get the skid, hook, and roll. So that surface is going to get out of skid phase quick. It's going to hook, and we need to get your bowling ball rolling forward quickly so it doesn't change directions so often. So playing the front, play the direction. Chris, you got to use a capital Q or it's not going to enter you. Okay? It's hashtag capital Q, and you can just do a separate one if you want. With most house shots being so super cliffed, what ball motion or layout would you recommend for to stay to the right longer? Again, that's a tough one for me to answer, Chris, because it's going to be different for every single player, almost specific to what I just said to Mike, right? So he's going to need to actually, if he can't find the oil or he can't give it away and it's too steep, he's got to find a way to play in the dirt, if you will. And it's going to be determined based on your ball speed, your tilt, your axis rotation. So that layout, if you will, isn't a generic one that I could say here in a group setting is this is what you need to do, okay? Because it's going to be different for you, Chris, because the way you release the ball is not the way that I release the ball, all right? We have different ways of throwing the ball. Would I love to be able to stay in a zone where I'm the most comfortable? I sure would. But there's also times that even with all the knowledge in the world and understanding the difference of the lanes and knowing what the lane is trying to tell me, still can't get it to match up correctly. I mean, I just had Monday night, I had a poor night for a league setting, if you will, because we had a pair of lanes where it wouldn't have mattered if I bought 10 balls into the building. I just, with my physical game and the way I was making shapes with my hand, I could basically, I couldn't change balls to make the reaction look any better. That was just what was dealt. And you know what? Spares were at a premium. Look at the U.S. Open right now on day one. The U.S. Open on day one was a true example of you're not always going to match up, and the lane's not always going to give you, no matter how much equipment you have, isn't going to make it that you're able to overcome it. I don't know how many ended up day one that ended up plus, but it wasn't many, right? You had, the best players in the world's going, 60, 100, 200 under on a pattern because of what they chose to put out there. So it's not always going to be something that's going to be Arsenal related, right? Question: is there any help for lightweight 12 pounds of power? When you do get down into that weight, Mike, obviously you don't have a lot of core help. Okay. You're utilizing what you can handle, and basically you're not getting in 12 pounds. The cores of those bowling balls are so small, which is another reason why the cover stock of the ball is going to dictate so much more about what you're going to do in the lane for you, right? So at 12 pounds and having small little bells and stuff in the inside of most of the balls and those cores, you're definitely seeing increases in diff, increases in RG in most of them. They're going to go higher. Balls are going to want to get down the lane, which guess what? You got it to the dirty spot of the lane, and that ball's going to go sideways. So again, it's really going to dictate trying and thinking outside the box, which is going to the other realm of it is hit that thing with a pad really hard, crowbar one with 500, whatever you got, throw some shots. And yes, they are going to lock up early at first, but once you get the hang of what you're doing, you'll understand that all you're trying to do is play the first, 10, 15, 20 feet of the lane and get your ball to go into a physical roll earlier. That's what's going to help you on that one. All right. So many good questions that have come through. There's quite a bit of entries that are coming through. So we're actually we're at an hour already that I've been talking, and I'm still only on the ball side of it. I think one of the things that everybody needs to understand is that equipment comes to your, don't forget to think about your shoes. Too often I hear this all the time now. I've done full segments with my local kids and staff and things along those lines where they're not understanding how their shoes and how their sliding affects what they're doing. Like, you got to come prepared. You should have every sole combination. You should have um, preparations to understand that if you're not comfortable doing that, equipment includes having multiple thumbs and tape if you need it, and God forbid if you need skin patch. It happens, right? You can break open and things like that. There's so many more things that can go on from the equipment side of it, that we don't take into consideration. But the main thing that I want you all to extract out of here, and I'm going to start sharing a screen here so I can do a giveaway tool quick. I think there's probably 10 or 12 people that have made some really good comments here that'll qualify for it. But the main thing that I want you to do is to understand that we really have to start understanding that the equipment we're going to choose is essentially so critical when we're building an arsenal. And I'm going to give myself a plug here that if you have the opportunity to be local to where I am, this is the perfect opportunity for you to make an appointment and come and see me and let me help you understand exactly what I'm talking about in even more detail than you've ever gone through before, because I want the experience to make it that you can feel it. But I'm going to draw a name here real quick and see who it comes up with. You should be able to start seeing this. And this is going to essentially be who is going to win something from me. And it's Chris Wilson. You lucky dog, you. I know he's watching that league. Chris, if you didn't see that, you can reach out to me. We're going to do the same thing we did this week. You can either select this week. I will let you select either a Better Than Yesterday t-shirt, or you can grab a Do You t-shirt, which is one of Carrie's signature lines from our friends over at Coolwick. Obviously, I won't need to ship it out so you can get that one local here, but we allow everybody to get into that. Ryan Graham, you're struggling at league. What ball should I throw? That's an impossible question, Ryan. Just throw it better. That's the answer to that one, right? He's just trying to jar a little bit, but I'll put you in a screen just so you can feel like you actually were part of the feed tonight, Ryan. Hope you're doing well, my bud. And if you are struggling in league, make sure you're throwing a ball that's a little slower. All right, there. I gave you an answer. I am not telling him that, Jason. That is not nice. I don't care what bowling ball brands you throw. I think we all understand that. We sell everything at my facility as well. It's a small industry. We're all in this together. But one other thing that I want you to understand, and I was saying to that is, and when it comes to equipment, you are going to notice I have a Turbo logo on my shirt here. Okay. And I'm going to eventually point to the right side of it when I can feel it. Obviously, a lot of you know that I do outside sales for Turbo. And we're putting a ton of emphasis and really trying to educate people on that side of it. So when it comes to equipment and things like that, the other thing I think that people forget so often is that they don't properly maintain finger inserts. Not specific to just thumb, but finger inserts do wear. Okay, they do wear out. You will start to lose feel in your bowling ball. You will start to throw that said bowling ball differently, and that part is so much to part of the game that you'll understand. And Terry Cobert, I just read that, and I do have them. I don't have them in blue. I have them in black, but they are in stock, pal. So I do carry semi bumps that you use. They are fully stocked, but that is a huge, huge, huge one for me when talking to my clients. That we generally see that we wait way too long to do proper maintenance on our equipment when it comes to grips. Making sure you have enough slugs and stuff that go around to use all your accessory things along those lines from the brands and stuff there. But these are all things that I want to educate you all on, and I am really just encouraging you to continue to come onto the feeds, continue to ask the questions when we're not on here. I love the interaction when people ask questions, because it makes doing these feeds a little easier for me because, I tend to talk so much, and by getting questions and comments like that from the audience helps me to make sure that the message is being received, or there's things that I'm actually answering that are important to you, because not every one of us is one and the same. We all have different ways that we look at it, but um, we can learn in these environments together. But again, I'm going to go back to the point that, I really think it's critical. If you're local, come and see me. Let me help you. Let me explain this in more detail. You will know that if you make an appointment, it blocks my time. You're getting dedicated time for me to explain through things. It's not a rush process by any means. And I just want to make you better than you were yesterday, right? It's near and dear to me. But the only sad part that I have to say tonight before I sign off here for the night is it's sad for you because I'm going to be taking 2 weeks off of the feed. I am actually taking a very well needed vacation where I'm going to be turning a lot of the social media stuff off. I will still do the Better Than Yesterday feeds in the morning, the short ones. But as far as hour-long feeds, I don't think I'm going to have the opportunity to do it while I'm gone. Hey, if I feel like I have time and I do, maybe I'll have a cocktail or something in my hand when I'm doing the presentation. But I am planning to take a little bit of time for myself and kind of enjoy a little getaway. So um, outside of that, gang, I want to thank everybody who popped on here tonight. So many great questions that came through here. Glad to answer them all. And I hope everybody had as much fun as I did. And I will be back talking to everybody soon. And we will see you later. Bye now.